What's up, everybody? Oh my god. Sorry, don't mind me. Just thinking about the amount of money that I've spent on what I'm going to talk about today. It gets to you sometimes. See, I did a video talking about omnibus editions a couple of weeks ago, and in that I bragged so much about how I hadn't spent that much money on any of those. And that's because all the money in my comic book collection is in my slabs. I don't think this is a problematic amount of graded books. This is it. This is the whole stack. I don't think that's a problematic amount. I had to pillage a lot from the wall display up here to get this all together, so I kind of destroyed the room, which is why I figured I would zoom in a little bit more. The first book that we'll talk about, my only green label book, this is Web of Spider-Man 118. This is that Scarlet Spider cover. This is just a neat cover. I got this for a lot cheaper than what it should have been, and the reason for that is that it has the Marvel subscription insert missing, so it's a green label, and it's a 9.2. Slabs are so weird. I don't really like the market about them. I think it's very bizarre, and it's just like not my vibe, but you know, you gotta find good deals where you can, and I think this was like 30 bucks, so I'll take a $30 slab any day of the week if it gets me a good deal. For me, there's kind of two big covers when it comes to Scarlet Spider. This is one of them, this 118. The other one is Spectacular Spider-Man 229. I have a couple copies of that. It came in like a poly bag, and so there's like a front cover to it. Then you can take that off, and it's just like Ben Reilly on the cover against the yellow background. I think that's kind of cool. Both of these are like cheap books. This 118 is not that expensive, but they're still, I mean, they're cool to have. And for this, like to have a slab that is his, you know, kind of iconic cover appearance is neat, and to get it for so cheap, so that's great. Next up, if you've seen Guardians of the Galaxy, you know him, you love him. This is the first slab I ever got. This is Warlock in the Infinity Watch, #1. This is a great book. I like this one a lot. This is a pretty iconic cover. I actually have a couple of raw copies of this book, one signed by Angel Medina, which is really cool. But I got this, and then I debated cracking this for a while, because I got this just a few weeks before I met Jim Starlin, and I thought if I crack this, I can get him to sign my copy of it and whatever else. And I didn't have any raw copies of it at the time. And I'm very close to having a complete run of Warlock in the Infinity Watch. I think I'm like 4 or 6 issues away. It's like just the very end of the run that I need to complete it, and so eventually I will complete that whole run, and it's neat to have the first one graded. This was like I said, the first slab that I ever bought, and I remember getting this shipped to Morro Bay, California, where I was living at the time, and unwrapping it and just having a great kind of first memory of getting a graded book. I didn't own any prior to this. This is like 2 years ago or something. And yeah, it's a great book. It's a great cover. It's pretty iconic. It's Starling, you know, really hitting his stride with Warlock and writing some really memorable stories and stuff. And I like this series a lot. And so I did think about cracking it, but I didn't. And I you know, maybe I should have, because now I don't have a Starling signed copy. One time in Portland a couple of years ago, I found, this was after I had met Starling. So I met Starling, then I was in Portland a couple months later, and I found a signed copy of this ungraded in a like not a dollar bin, but like in a bin in a comic shop somewhere. And I don't even know if they realized that it was signed, because it was just in with the rest of the stuff. Like, you know, it was not on the wall or anything. But it was like 25 bucks. And I was like, you know what? I have the graded book, and I have a raw copy of that. At that point, I had a raw copy that wasn't signed, but I was like, I have that. I'm like, I could buy this, but I met him. I got signatures on other stuff that I like. So like, why would I do that? And so I now don't have a signed copy, but my raw copy is now signed by Angel Medina, which is cool. Angel is it's a cool guy. I met him in Michigan at a Comic-Con at the beginning of this year in like February or March or something. There's a handful of Warlock books in here that we'll get through very quickly. This is Warlock number 14. This was like $10. This is a 7.0. This was so cheap. There's a couple of these that like I will buy slabs of almost anything if it's like dirt cheap. If it's less than the cost of grading, it's like, oh, well, I'll just buy it, because like, why not? Who knows? Like, if that book were to pop or something, I would have like, you know, a really cheap copy of it. And these, I got 2 of these. The other one's in this stack somewhere. We'll get to it, but I got 2 of these for like 10 bucks, and I just thought that was kind of hilarious. And I like Warlock, so anything that's got Warlock, that's got Starling cover, it's a newsstand. Like, it's just, you know, it's a neat book to have, and it's just cool to put up on the wall somewhere and have some more Warlock art. So next up, I talked about this actually in my last video, but this is Quazar number 38. This is a great slab. I like this a lot. I just got this. It's a 9.8. One thing that you'll find is a theme here here is that I love to get books that are like probably not a lot of them are graded. And in this case, I mean, I haven't looked at the census, but I can't imagine that Quazar 38 has that many 9.8 copies out there. It's not worth anything. Like, I don't think that I'm going to, have an incredible investment on my hands here. But what's neat about it is this is Greg Capullo cover art. And I love Greg Capullo, and I've met him, and like he's such a legendary artist. And obviously his work on Batman is like the best ever, and his work with Spawn is really cool. Like, there's all this stuff that Greg Capullo has done. And he's worked a lot with Todd McFarlane, who's obviously one of my favorites. And Todd also did a cover for Quazar, did the cover for Quazar number 13. I love Quazar. I think he's an underrated character and somebody that like I hope one day gets some representation in the MCU in some way. I don't think it's going to happen realistically, but hey, I can dream, right? And so Quazar number 38, this is a cool cover. It's got him fighting Warlock. It's got Thanos. It's got Hulk. It's got Wolverine. It's got Drax. It's got whatever that guy's name is. I don't remember. It's just a neat cover, and it's cool to have something drawn by Greg Capullo on a Quazar cover. Now, here's the one that if you're a comic book fan in 2024, this is what I'm going to use to send my kids to college someday. This is what I'm going to use to buy, a beach house somewhere in Santa Monica that overlooks the water. And I'm going to, take long vacations every year for months at a time, just off the money that I make from this one single book. That's right. You know him. You love him. It's Darkhawk 1 in a 9.4. A lot of the rest of these I have spent like a decent amount of money on. To buy a slab, right, you're starting at like $50 probably, going up from here. I went to a con this might have been Chicago, or maybe this was Michigan. I don't remember. It was less than a year ago, but I think it was like the end of last year, maybe. And I will go through any box of slabs that I see and just look for deals and look for stuff that might be undervalued, whatever. Because of the reputation this book has had and how much it's popped in the last year and a half. And I have a raw copy of this. I've had a raw copy for like 3 years. Like I have a huge Darkhawk run, and I've had that forever because I genuinely like the character, which I know is not why people are kind of making this book popular, but I like the character a lot. So I've had all this stuff for a long time, but I'm digging through the thing, and this was $20 for this 9.4 slab. And I pick it up, and I'm kind of like, I'm looking at it, I'm like, it's 9.4, like it's in great shape. It's clearly, CGC, obviously they make their mistakes, but like it's in good shape. The slab is in great condition. It looks like it was just graded. And I pick it up and I take it to the guy at the booth, and I'm like, hey, like I want this, that's it. And he picks it up and he's like, oh wow, like this is really underpriced. And I was like, yeah, I'm buying it though. You had it stickered for $20. And he's like, yeah, no, I mean, whatever, no worries. And obviously he sold it to me because it's not like he can change he could change the price probably when I get up there, but I'd be kind of pissed. And so I buy it for $20, and I'm not saying that it's worth like dramatically more than that. And obviously it doesn't have like inherent worth. If not for the kind of joke culture around this book, it wouldn't be a very valuable book. But for me to have a display piece, I have a Darkhawk action figure like the Marvel Legends from a couple years ago that I display right in front of this. And to have this is like really, really cool because I thought once the meme kind of took off and people were really about it, like I thought, oh, okay, well, there goes my chance to have a graded Darkhawk 1. And it's why I'm thankful that I have a lot of the stuff that like, if it is an obscure character, like I will still get it. I have like my Sleepwalker one, big Sleepwalker fan. I don't know if I've ever talked about it on this channel, but I have a lot of Sleepwalker stuff, which I'll talk about at some point. Maybe I'll do a video on Sleepwalker or something, but it's just neat to have one of these books that like now has kind of this meme presence and people, joke about it and like it and whatever, but it's cool to have. And like, it's genuinely for me as a fan of Darkhawk, a great book that I really like. This one, I think this was less than $100. This one was. It was not that expensive because I'm thinking of a different one that I have that was a little pricier. That's not a slab. That's just a raw book. But this is just a fun thing to have for display purposes. One thing, I'll talk about it after I show what it is. So this is Invincible number 0, which is obviously, it wasn't printed before the series started. It's because it's drawn by Ryan Otley, so it was obviously after Cory Walker left the book, so it'd been a little while, and they went back and did an issue 0. This is not an uncommon thing. I have Silver Surfer Volume 3, issue 0. You get like SpiderMan issue 0. There's just, they'll do that occasionally where it's a way to say, hey, like this isn't an issue 1. It's actually, we're going negative. I think Silver Surfer has a issue -1 actually. If I can find that in my collection, I think I might have that. But Invincible. So the problem with Invincible to me is, it's two things, right? One, the individual issues have gotten expensive the first appearance or the Marvel team up with Spider-Man or like some of those early kind of interesting books before the book had like the mainstream popularity it has. They were kind of easy to get, but there weren't a lot of them printed. And then now that the show has come out and it's so popular, like it's incredibly difficult to get like big Invincible issues. And so that sucks because I, you know, as just a fan who was a fan, I'm not gonna say I was a hardcore fan before the show. I knew about it. I hadn't read it. The show got announced. I read it, and then the show came out. And I was like, oh, I dig this. This is really cool. And now it's like I watch the show, but like I'm primarily a fan of the books. That's where most of my interest lays. To find Invincible stuff is hard. That's not super expensive. So I have a couple other ones, a couple other issues. But the second problem with Invincible, and I love Ryan Ottley. Like I've met him a couple times. He's a really cool guy, and I love his artwork. Like specifically his Spider-Man work. I love his work on Invincible. All this stuff. I don't like the covers of most Invincible issues. I will see them at cons and at shops and stuff. You can dig them up every once in a while, but like 99% of them, I'm like, that's not interesting. That doesn't display nice. I would rather just read the book. But like, I don't really care about the cover. This is actually a legitimately cool cover. It's a full, you know, action pose of Invincible, which is surprisingly hard to find. You can find some other issues in the run that are like covers that incorporate a different character in some sort of pose, central figure, whatever. But a lot of them, while they are very cool and they're very relevant to the story, look more like a panel from the book. It's not really like a display piece. And in a sense, right? I dig that. I think that's cool. I think that's very like indie comic, like selling it on the merit of the story. I think that's awesome. And The Walking Dead has this. It's something about Kirkman books, right? Like there's very few like really kind of, you know, punchy covers because it's actually just a really good story. You're buying it to read it. But with Invincible, it's like I think it's hard to find covers that I would actually genuinely want to hang up on the wall, and this is totally one of them. The other one, there's another one in the run. I can't remember what number it is. I'll put it up on the screen now, but I have like a copy of that signed by Ryan Ottley, and it's cool. I like it a lot. And so it's just like finding those covers that are iconic, that are cool, that are easy to display is tough. And I was glad to find this. I think this was like $50, probably less, honestly, because I don't know that I would have spent more than that. But anyway, yeah, I really dig it. This next one, I feel like I might have gotten kind of taken for a ride on, but for me, this is another series that like, I think it's kind of difficult to find a really good display copy of something in this series with these characters that's cheap, that's like approachable. And I know this was less. I want to say this was like $75. That's the number that pops into my head when I think of it, and that seems reasonable. It seems like about what I would have paid for it. But this is 8.0. Eastman and Laird's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures #1. This is the second series. This is not the OG TMNT Adventures. That one is a lot pricier, and this is an 8.0, so it was a little bit cheaper. And I don't care about the number. To me, it's all about how it presents, and also how it presents in relation to what the book is. Like, I would buy, you know, a 0.5 copy of Amazing Fantasy 15 if like it was beat to hell, but you could like tell it was an Amazing Fantasy 15, if you know what I mean. Like there's you know, the bigger the book is, the more like deteriorated it can be, and I will still buy it because it's like, oh well, I want the book, right? I want to own that piece of history. My dream book, I mean, I guess I have 3, but my actual like those top 3 are all the same, and it's Fantastic Four 1, which I don't think I'll ever own, but that's a dream. And then Fantastic Four later in the 40s, whatever it is, 45 and 46, I think. That's Galactus and Silver Surfer first appearance. And to me, it's like I would take copies of those that looked horrible, that were very beat up, if it's still like presented okay. If it was a good price, you know, if I could do that, then it's like, if I could buy it, if it was something I could afford, then like it would be worth it. And in this case, it's an 8.0, but it looks beautiful. I mean, if I cracked this out of the slab, it's like, it's not going to look bad at all. 8 is still a fantastic number, and it's a very cool cover. It's a neat Eastman cover, and I mean, it's Eastman and Laird. They both worked on this, and it's just kind of unconventional. It's got that kind of fun vibe to it, very 80s cartoon influenced, right? Obviously, the colored bandanas is one of those hallmarks of that. And I just dig this. I think this is cool. It's also published by Archie, which is funny and interesting, given that they now are with IDW, and there's like all this legacy of the printing there, and Mirage and all the other stuff. So it's just a fun pocket of comic books, and it's a great way for me when I'm buying Ninja Turtles action figures, which is not common. I don't have a lot. A lot of the ones I had when I was a kid, so I've kept them since then. But when I'm looking for them, like, it's never appealed to me that much to get stuff that looks really like gritty and dark, and you know, the real ninja kind of aspect. I have one of the Last Ronin figures, and I like that one. But other than that, every figure that I have is very, very bright, colorful. They're almost all Raphael, but they're, you know, really kind of cartoon influenced and very cheery and fun. And that's the aesthetic for the Ninja Turtles that I like the most. And so it's cool to have a book that kind of represents that. I could easily, you know, well, not easily, but I could get something from the run, the original run, and have that as kind of the display piece where it's black and white and it's got the really kind of Daredevil, you know, noir type influence thing. That's cool. I like to read those stories. I have them collected in a trade or whatever, but like I would prefer to display something that looks very fun and little kid-ish, and like, you know, that to me that's more exciting. So yeah, Eastman and Laird's Ninja Turtles Adventures #1. I love this book. Oh, the last detail I forgot to mention on this is I'm pretty sure this is a Canadian price variant. It's $1.25, which I do not think is what the price was. So this might be Canadian price variant. Even though it doesn't say anything on the slab, I feel like I remember when I looked it up that it was a price variant. So that's kind of cool. Of course, right after talking about it, I just dropped it on the floor really hard, but it's fine. It's in good shape. It survived. I was going to save this one to talk about at the end, but you know, why not cut to the big important stuff right away? I've talked about this book so many times on this channel. I'm sorry to bore you again. But I want to tell you about the most important thing I own. If someone told me tomorrow that I have to get rid of my entire comic book collection and I can only keep one item, I truly do think this is the item I would keep, which is gutting to say, right? Because if I had to get rid of the rest of my collection, I would be getting rid of all of the other signed books that I have where I met the person. So I'd be getting rid of like my Jim Lee signature from meeting Jim Lee, all my Frank Miller signatures from meeting Frank, like just everybody, right? My Kevin Eastman, it's not graded, so it's not in this video, but I have like a triple signed book that Kevin Eastman signed, a Last Ronin book, and like all of this stuff. And so I would keep this, even that's how important it is to me. Like when I think of the things that are my favorite to collect and that are iconic and that are an important part of my collection, when I bought this, it was like I got it because I was like, well, I will keep this on display near me for the rest of my life probably. And here we are, and it's always on display. It's always on my wall right over there, on a wall that you never see on camera. Maybe I'll shoot a video against that sometime so you can see. But this is Avengers Assemble Omega #1, Alex Ross, Timeless Galactus variant. A little peek behind the curtain here is I'm going to show you guys here. I'm going to cut to my my phone camera. So on my phone camera here, you can see I'm shooting, shooting the videos, whatever. Up there, I have the poster version of this cover that hangs right in front of me while I record. So I'm recording here, and what I'm looking at is my camera and that. So that's how critical this book is to me. Okay, back to the main camera. That is how important and special this cover is to me. My only gripe with it, and this is a legitimate gripe, I have the over here next to me on the wall, the Timeless Villains full poster. It's like the giant kind of panoramic poster that Alex Ross did of all the Timeless Villains, and then right above it is the Heroes one. And in the background of that, there is a much wider image of Galactus. And in the poster book, which is very buried in my closet, but in the individual posters and the one that's hanging on the wall there actually is more to the image. As far as I know, there is no way to get that larger image. This cover and the poster that's just the face are the only ways to access that image. Even though in the background of the Timeless Villains poster, it has like a larger, with some of the head shape and some of the helmet. I don't think there's any way to get to it, but I will say it doesn't really matter to me too much because this cover is a really cool and intimidating way to display Galactus. I think it's like it's just really neat. And I'm not gonna ramble too much about Galactus. I'm gonna say that there's reason that I am looking forward so much to Fantastic Four First Steps, which is coming out next year, and that we got that little tease of Galactus in that movie. I just finished the first volume of Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four run, and there's some really fantastic stuff in there with Galactus and some really interesting concepts. I just love this character, and this is something that like I'm very unlikely to kind of jump on a hype train for a new announcement of something. It takes a lot for me to do that. I follow, McFarlane Toys will do all kinds of like coming soon and pre-order this action figure and whatever. As much as they make a lot of stuff that I really, really would like to own, it takes a lot for me to jump on and say, I'm going to buy this right now. I'm just going to throw the money at it and pre-order it, whatever. When this got announced, I think I might have been the first person to order one of these. It was the most expensive thing I've ever bought for my comic collection. I think until I got my ASM 300. I think the ASM 300 was a little bit more expensive, and that's not graded. That's just in a case. That's why we're not talking about those books. I'm probably going to do a Spider-Man video here in the next couple weeks, kind of talking about the big ticket Spider-Man books. But this is, yeah, it's expensive and it's beautiful, and it's something that I have very proudly hanging on my wall. I see it every single day. It's basically the first thing I see when I walk in my door at the end of the day. It just brings me so much joy. So yeah, that's my big ticket book. And then we've got a few more still. To counterbalance it with something very cheap, this is that other Warlock issue. This is Warlock number 13. I think the other one was number 14. Starling cover, it's a 7.5. Again, I think it was like $10. And I was like, hey, that's literally like as cheap as getting a raw copy of this. I might as well get a slab. Love me some Warlock. It's fun. I have a little Warlock display that you can't really see, but it's on the wall over here. And it's fun to rotate out the graded book, and having 3 different Warlock books that are graded is cool. You can just switch them out, which is neat. So yeah, really dig this one. So this one is an interesting piece of comics history. I have a couple of characters that I don't collect, and it's not really on principle. It's just that like I don't know enough about the character. I haven't read enough of the arcs to really like get into buying single issues. If I'm gonna read something, I will buy a trade, or I'll buy like a collected edition of something and read it and see if I dig it. But I don't know enough of the history of the character to buy single issues. The biggest example of that is X-Men. I own less than 10 X-Men single issues. I don't know that I own a single X-Men trade paperback. Like I'm looking at my shelf right now and I don't see anything X-Men. I have a couple like X-Force or like New Mutants things, but those are like I've had them forever. I've read them maybe once. Like X books have never been my thing. And another character that applies to is Daredevil. I don't buy Daredevil books. It's not a personal problem that I have with Daredevil or any of the creative people behind it, but I actually legitimately think I own 3. I guess I own 3 Daredevil books. I own one of the Marvel graphic novels that's a Daredevil book, and then I own one Frank Miller, Klaus Janson cover that I was going to have signed at Fan Expo Chicago last year, but I didn't end up getting it signed because I had other stuff that I wanted Frank Miller and Klaus Janson to sign. And then I have this slab, and I bought this slab, or I got this slab for free in buying some other books. Like I was looking, it's a 5.5. I bought some other like bigger ticket book. I think this might have been when I bought my, what was it? I was completing a run of the original Secret Wars at the time. It wasn't Secret Wars 8, but I bought like 2 or 3 of the other books, like I know that I bought 2 copies of issue 1 from the same buyer. It might have been that purchase. This was like a year and a half ago, so I don't really remember. But it was at a con, and I bought some like bigger ticket stuff. And I was looking at this, and this was like 20 or 25 bucks. And I go, hey, like, can you just throw this in because I'm buying these bigger ticket books? And he was like, yeah, that's fine, because he just wanted to unload it. But it's an interesting piece of Daredevil history, from what I understand. And I think it's cool because it's not only a Frank Miller book, but also like it's a weird Daredevil cover. Like this is not a lot of the covers from that run are very action oriented, very like extreme, and you know there's all this kind of cool imagery that's very, very Frank Miller, right? This is just sad. This is Elektra's death, and like it's just an interesting one. So I don't have a Daredevil action figure. If I do, I think this would be a interesting thing to display behind it. But this is more just like because it was free and it's a 5.5. I'm fascinated by middle range graded books because I assume it was known by the person that owned it when they sent it in that it wasn't going to be like a 9.8. So they just sent it in, and then now they've kind of offloaded it. And books that like, I'm sure there are plenty of these on the census in higher grades, but like having a 5.5 of this is kind of weird. That's kind of more rare than having like a perfect copy, because most people that have a non-perfect raw copy, they're not going to get it. They're not going to get like the issue after Elektra dies graded. And so it's just kind of a weird thing to have, and it was free. So that works great for me. Now I know all of you out there in the comments are thinking, Peter, you are a fake fan of graded books if you don't have something from the true grading company. Of course, the almighty, all-powerful PGX. No, I'm kidding. I don't know any PGX books. If you've ever picked up a PGX slab, you know why, and that's because you pick it up and it feels like a tortilla chip. It feels like it's going to break open just by looking at it the wrong way. I have found PGX slabs that I was going to buy because they were so cheap, and my first thought was like, oh, well, I'll buy this because I can then crack it and just have the raw book, because I can crack it by just like touching the corners really hard. I don't own any PGX books, and I don't have any plans to buy them unless they really change their approach. But what I am talking about is CBCS. I own one CBCS book right now, and that is because I have never sent a book in to get graded. I have a couple books that I would like to send in to get graded. I'm kind of waiting for a time in my life where I have enough disposable income to do that. But when I do, there's a handful of signed books that I'd like to get sent in or take to a convention. I guess I'm kind of skittish about mailing them, but like take them to convention, fill out the paperwork. It's just expensive. It's just an expense that I could never justify in the moment because most of the time I was already spending enough money to get the signature itself. So anyway, that's a very roundabout thing. When I'm ready to send those books in, they will be going to CBCS because I like their new labels. I like their slabs. They're good quality. And in the meantime, I have one CBCS slab, and this is a book that I had a raw copy of since I was like 13 years old, and that I have read to death and is one of my all-time favorite characters. Still a character, surprisingly, I don't have a good action figure of because they haven't made that many over the years, and so it's been tough to find an action figure that I would feel kind of justifies a nice display for this character. But when I do get that action figure, this is going to be the book behind it. Of course, CBCS 9.4, it's Spider-Man 2099, issue 1, with this really cool foil cover. I don't really know what makes this a 9.4 other than the fact that like there's a tiny little bit on the side here, and it doesn't show up on camera at all because of the gloss cover, but like the staple kind of bends a little bit out there. That might be the only thing. It looks like it's in fantastic condition, so I don't know what holds it back from being a 9.8, but who cares? It's about owning a book that you like, and I love this book. When I was younger, I had this book for a long time, and I read this first issue so many times, and I never had the second issue until many years later, so I didn't know what happened. But if you've read this issue, you know how sick it is, like how cool the visuals are, like just it's a neat introduction to a character. And obviously now this is worth some money probably. I could get more for it than I spent on it. I think I spent 50 or 60 bucks on this. Which might have been more than, it's actually worth, but I think it's cool, and I think it's a great addition to my collection, something I'm proud to have on display. And I dig it. I just think that, like, Spider-Man 2099 as a character has staying power. They've done a lot of series with him in the last couple years. It's been a great couple years to be a fan of Spider-Man 2099, which is very cool. He's getting his due. He's getting his recognition. A lot of people know who he is now. Even if the version in the movie is, like, not exactly the same as the one in the comics, who cares? Get over yourself. Don't be a pretentious fanboy. That's kind of my goal, at least, is just to say, hey, if people are recognizing this character that I've loved for years and having a good time, then like that's awesome, and that's a win for all of us. And I'm happy that my guy and somebody that I've cared about since I was a kid now is popular. So I like this book a lot. I think it's very cool, and I look forward to having this pretty much forever. I like this CBCS slab too. Like, it's sturdy. It feels. I feel like it feels more secure than the CGC slabs, and so that's why if I'm gonna ever send anything in to get graded, I'm gonna send in to CBCS because it's just generally it feels like a more stable, steady situation. But who knows? I could change my mind, I guess, if CGC really changes things. They did add the signature verification thing to CGC now with JSA, and I'm fascinated by that because I think that was like the determining factor for many people for a long time, is that you could send stuff into CBCS to get signature verified, and you couldn't for CGC. They had to view it, they had to verify it in person, and now being able to have that option, it was intended as a competitive edge, but I don't know that it's going to work in CGC's favor, just because I think that people are at the end, people are concerned with the quality of the slab and with the consistency of the grading, and both of those things are clearly winning from CBCS. So if they're able to get the graphic design department on point and get some of the value and have a proper census, I think that's the primary thing here. Anyway, this is a lot of rambling. I would love to talk about this in depth, but I've also made a video about graded books, so if you're interested in that, that's on the channel. It's kind of more of a video essay style thing you can look into, but yeah, this is one of my favorite books that I own in my collection, and I'm very proud to have it. That's it, guys. That's all the graded books I own. If you want to hear more about anything else, then keep watching, and if you don't, you can unsubscribe or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.